You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's how you know it's official. It bears the official stamp of the Iron Lady on the Chris Voss Show. For 14 years, I sung that line, and you come up to me at shows and events going, thechrisvossshow.com, and it got kind of scary. I always had to call security because I never know who any of you are when you run up on me at a show. So we hired her to do it. So if you ever see me at a show, you've got to go find the Iron Lady and tell her how much you really like the show. And you like her little limerick she does, or whatever the hell you call it. We had an amazing author on the show. When don't we, damn it? There's never a darn time where we don't have an amazing guest on the show. Unless it's just me talking to the mic, and then that's just a group of idiots. But the rest of the time, we have the most smartest minds that come to the show, share with you their journeys, their insights, their expertise, their cathartic moments in life, their lessons they learned, and as we always say on the Chris Voss Show, stories are the owner's manual to life. I need to put that on a shirt or a coffee cup. And if you do it, I'll sue you. So wait for me. We'll have those. Those will be in the gift shop when you do the tour of the studio. There's no gift shop. Anyway, we have an amazing author on this show, a very young lady with her newest book that's just come out May 14th, 2024. The Third Perspective, Brave Expression in the Age of Intolerance. Just came out tomorrow, actually, with the book. And we'll be talking about her insights and all that good stuff and what's going on in the world so we can be better darn educated. Africa Brooke is the author. She's a Zimbabwean-born consultant, coach, speaker, and podcaster. She's recognized for her work in overcoming self-sabotage and self-censorship. She's the founder and CEO of Africa Brooke International. She provides consulting, coaching, and support to a global audience. She hosts 2 personal development podcasts, Beyond the Self and Unthinkable Thoughts. We thought about making that show, our show, Unthinkable Thoughts, but no one liked the thoughts that I think. So I think people like her thoughts better. Mine are dark and dangerous, and it depends on which person I was talking. She's also a frequent guest on TV shows, podcasts, and radio broadcasts. Her insights have been featured in publications like The Guardian and has been delivering keynotes at prestigious venues, including Cambridge University. Welcome to the show. How are you, Africa?
Thank you. Oh, that's a mouthful, isn't it? The bio.
I love calling you Africa. I feel like I'm just talking the whole continent at this point.
Thank you. It's a big one. And you know what? Yeah. I love the energy that you started this off with. So I already feel good. But thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to sit with you.
Thanks for coming as well. And folks, we're hosting Africa today. We'll have India on next week. No, I'm just kidding. So there you go. So Africa, give us your .coms. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Yes, so you can find me, the social media, the only one that I use is Instagram, and you can find me at Africa Brooke with an E at the end. My website is africabrooke.com, just so you can get a full picture of my work and what it is that I do. And if any thoughts come up in this or something that you disagree with or strongly agree with, you can get in touch with me and we can continue the conversation.
There you go. And if you want, you can box it out with her or something.
Yes, please.
I just had this image of a fight in my head. I don't know what's going on. That Tyson thing's, I'm just waiting for that Tyson fight with that one annoying guy from social media.
Right.
There you go. So give us a 30,000 overview of your new book and insights, The Third Perspective.
So to me, and this is why I'm always so curious about how that title lands for people. To me, the third perspective, I see it as a call for people to step out of the binary. I feel like, and it's actually not just a feeling, but it's also an observation based on the data that I've collected, working and speaking with thousands of people. We're in a time right now where there's so much pressure, and I wonder what you think about this, Chris, to pick a side, to prove your goodness in some way. Are you left? Are you right? Are you pro? Are you anti? Are you woke or anti-woke? Are you with us or against us? And especially now at the time of recording this, I know that people are feeling this more than ever. So to me, even though I started writing this book 3 years ago, I just want people to realize that we don't have to buy into these rigid categories that people are placed into. You know, it's an invitation into that third perspective where there is nuance, where we get to say, actually, I don't agree with this, and this is why, where we get to have dialogue without feeling like we need to force people to share the same worldview. And the subtitle is Brave Expression in the Age of Intolerance, because I think it's no shock to anyone that we're in this time where people are constantly walking on eggshells, terrified of saying the wrong thing because you might be cancelled for it, XYZ. But I think we need to push back on this culture. I think we need to be more courageous. I don't think we should just accept this as the norm. So through my work as a consultant, as a writer, as a researcher, I don't just want to give people the why of why we've become intolerant, the why of the so-called culture war. I think we're at a point where people need actual solutions, and this is what I want to do with this book.
I love it because we do need more of this.
Right.
We do need, we do need to talk to each other. We need to work together. We need to quit this extreme tribalism where, and you put it just perfectly, people feel like they have to pick an extreme side, maybe. I'm a moderate Democrat. I've kind of moved around from both sides of the spectrums, and both sides of the political spectrum. And I've talked about this on the show. I think most people know.
Right.
But to me, I feel really comfortable being a moderate. I think the extremes of both parties move the goalposts on me.
Yes.
And where there was a time where I was a Republican, and then there was also a time where I was a liberal, and I probably still am, like, technically a liberal when it comes to the liberalism of the Constitution and things of that nature. They move the goalposts with the woke folks. So
Right.
And so I think it's really important. And the other thing you mentioned is feeling like we're being forced to identify with either team, and then we have to start running our PR and talking like, with those talking points.
Yeah.
And to me, what I found very comfortable at being a moderate Democrat is I've been able to sit with both sides and go, okay, well, I understand that, this side maybe isn't a big fan of abortion, but what are they trying to accomplish? What is important to them? And maybe what they're trying to accomplish isn't going about a way that's going to work for them or in a way that's going to work for everybody. So how do we figure out how to meet in the middle? How do we try and figure out how to build bridges? And politically, we used to do that up until after Tip O'Neill.
Right.
And we need more of that.
Yeah.
When I have conversations with people now about politics, and I only do it with people that I feel are smart enough to be able to deal with it, the first thing I do is I lay a foundation. I go, we're going to lay a foundation first. We're all Americans. And we're going to have this discussion as Americans, not as, left and right. We're going to have this discussion as Americans. And anytime it gets out of control with, your side does this, I go, whoa. We're Americans first. Fuck all the parties. We're Americans first. The Constitution is our thing. So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really appreciate you kind of giving me more context into your experience of this, because I think our lives have become so heavily politicized. And I do really think something changed fundamentally post 2016 with sort of the explosion of Trump and the level of just the polarization that we were experiencing from that point in time, and the role that social media played in sort of entrenching these echo chambers where people are just so shamelessly intolerant of any worldview that doesn't neatly match up with theirs. So I think for me, I think a big part of what I realize about this, and I write about this extensively in the book, but also in my work, is that we have an inability to hold our own contradictions. So it feels like it's a frightening thing to say, actually, I agree with that person on the right, or I agree with that person on the left that has been labeled as woke. We're so terrified because we think we're going to be cast out of our group if we do so. So I often come to the conclusion that because we are so incapable of holding our own contradictions and our own multiple truths, we can't do that for other people. So when we encounter people like yourself that are able to say, actually, I can see both sides, or sometimes I'm more in the middle, or I don't have an opinion, it feels threatening to our sense of self because we think, how dare you? How the fuck are you expressing yourself when I can't, you know? I think it's a lot to do with this sort of projection that we have as individuals, and then we come together as a collective of people that are so intolerant of themselves that they have no choice but to project it, and we call that cancel culture.
Yeah.
Right?
What are your thoughts on cancel culture?
Oh gosh. You know what? I coined a term that I think is far more useful: collective sabotage. Because I think what cancel culture does, and I'll go into exactly what I mean by that. I think what the term cancel culture does is that it's been so politicized that it's either going to preach to the choir, people that probably label everything as cancel culture, or it's going to land with the people that think cancel culture doesn't exist. It's just people in power being held accountable. So I think we have a definition issue to begin with, because if we're working with very different definitions, how can we even have a productive conversation? But the reason why I call it collective sabotage is because I have been researching and studying and trying to understand self-sabotage for the past nearly 9 years now. And I realized that what we call cancel culture, which is a combination of public shaming, it's doxing, it's an intolerance of differing worldviews, it's just that projection that I'm talking about, but it also manifests in so many different ways. It can only be made up by individuals who are in their own mode of self-sabotage, individuals who lack awareness, individuals who lack critical thinking, who are driven by fear, driven by the fear of having their worldview shattered to pieces through questioning, right? So then we end up coming together as a collective. So to me, collective sabotage just illustrates what we call cancel culture so much better. But I think it's a huge problem, which is why I wrote this book. And I'm bold enough to say that my work and this book is the antidote to cancel culture, because I haven't seen people fuse the why and the how. I think it's so easy to go on a rant about cancel culture, about the woke, but how many people are offering us tangible solutions as to how we can actually start to navigate this environment that we're in? So I think cancel culture is a very, very big problem. And at the same time, I think the language of cancel culture is not useful because it's not specific enough. And you find that we'll never come to a point of agreement of how to even fix the problem if we're working with different definitions. So that's sort of my thinking around it.
I love this, the term that you've coined, collective sabotage. I think we do need to redefine cancel culture.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. I find it ironic and kind of hypocritical how both sides seem to complain about it, but then they both enjoy it.
They love it.
Like I've seen, people on Fox News say, "I'm being canceled right now," and we're like, "We checked this viral thing. You're not being canceled. You're just throwing yourself up on the cross, and we need the wood." It's kind of interesting how it's a badge of honor on some things.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
I'm still waiting to be cancel culture. I've missed out so far.
Have you experienced anything remotely close to cancellation or public shaming or anything of the sort, considering how visible you are?
No, I've sometimes I get shit for my ideas on Facebook. Sometimes people, when you're a moderate, people really have a hard time figuring it out.
I know.
It's kind of funny because it throws them. They're like, "What do you believe in?" And I'm like, "Well, I sit and I look at both sides and I think about what's important. And we're America. There's a Constitution. I've read the Federalist Papers. I'm pretty familiar with what the Founding Fathers intended, and I think that intent falls through. And we have a lot of great guests on the show who teach me about everything, democracies and illiberalism and the Constitution and what the founders wanted. We've had a lot of that on the show. And so it's funny because it kind of diffuses them, but it throws them like a curveball. They don't know. I'm on the Democrat side, but I really try. I kind of went, what you've described is kind of what I went through. There
Mm,
seems to be this thing where the people who want to do cancel culture on both sides, because they're both using it. It's
mm-hmm,
just ironic,
mm-hmm.
and it's basically this. I don't- you know what basically what you said. I hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. Oh, I don't want to
Right.
hear your idea. Oh, it affronts me or it hurts me or it gives me a microaggression. Oh, you know. But hearing each other's ideas, we've done this on the show. We've had a Republican congressman and Democrat congressman. I mean, obviously we don't
Mm-hmm,
invite the toxic people, but
mm-hmm.
we've had plenty of people on here. We had I remember the governor of Massachusetts was on here, the prior one, who was like one of the most popular governors in the nation,
Mm.
and he was very good at not playing the middle. That sounds a little manipulative, but he could see both sides, and I think
Yeah.
that's what we need to do more, and we need to listen to each other, and but we both have to be open to listening.
Chris, I agree. I couldn't agree more. And you know what's so interesting? It's like all of this sounds so obvious. It's like, yeah, no shit, we need to listen. But it's amazing how if you start to actually observe the way in which we speak to each other, the way in which we react to, let's say, a black person that says, actually, I'm a Republican, because we've bought into these, we're so obsessed with identity, which is something that I talk about a lot. So, just a little bit of context. In 2021, I wrote an open letter called Why I'm Leaving the Cult of Wokeness. Please, if you're listening to this, go ahead and read that, okay? This thing blew up. Within a couple of weeks, it was read by over 10 million people, 4,000 words, by the way. Now, and this is just the data that I have, now it's been read by over 27 million people, but it's on different resource lists.
Wow.
It would have been so easy for people to know what to do with me. And in that letter, I was pretty much declaring that I'm not playing the identity politics game anymore. That
Mm.
I can see that because I'm a Black woman and because I'm a left leaning Black woman, right? All of these identity markers, I'm expected to think and speak and behave in a very specific way.
Mm.
And it was just my declaration that I'm not going to be playing that game. I'd bought into it very briefly in the summer of 2020 because of everything that had happened with George Floyd, etc.
Yeah.
And even though some very valuable conversations came from that time, and I'm very grateful that we had them,
Mm.
there was also that's when I really got to see the face of intolerance in myself, but also in a lot of people. I just got to see the binary thinking. I got to
Mm.
see just how the casual dehumanization of white people happening in that point in time, and how it was just supposed to be seen as sort of normal that they're the enemy in some way. So there were a lot of things that were very frightening at the time to say, I am not going to participate in this. And I bring this up because of the thing that you're saying about being a moderate and people not knowing what to do with you. Because for me, as a Black left leaning woman, that's like, I will not participate in this culture. It's very it's very jarring for people because they would know what to do with me if I was leaving the left and going to the right.
Mm.
Then it would be a neat story. If I was the British Candace Owens, they would know what to do with me.
Yeah.
you know but it's so interesting what can happen when you start to see where you're not allowing yourself to really think critically because you believe that you hold a certain identity. So that's what I want people to just be very conscious of where are you not allowing yourself to entertain a different worldview, be it your own or someone else's, because you have an alliance to some kind of identity or community or label, or because I'm a liberal, I'm not supposed to agree with this, because I'm conservative, I'm not supposed to listen to this person.
Yeah.
I think for me, the first and most important step is just being aware of where you're censoring your own expansion because of an
Mm.
alliance to identity.
Yeah.
Mm.
You perfectly said. I'm going to read this letter. I pulled it up on the
Oh,
computer so
yes,
I can
please
read it.
do.
But you know, you're right. When we start locking into our ideals, we in our belief systems, we close out other information
Yes.
or other data. And it used to be in America
Mm-hmm.
that we all saw ourselves as Americans, and
Mm.
irregardless of our foibles over the last 200 almost 50 years,
Yeah.
we've always been able to center on that one thing. Who's our enemy? Oh, Russia. or China, or,
Mm-hmm.
but we're all together on that. Now we've seen that dissipate, and we are at these crossroads where, you go onto these college campuses and you can't talk to them. A recent thing of the whole anti-Israel
Mm-hmm.
thing is, I saw someone going to interview some of the people at the camps of the colleges that are going on
Mm-hmm.
right now. It's 2024, folks. If you're watching this 10 years from now on YouTube, and they were trying to interview them as to what their motivations were, um, and they wouldn't talk to the people.
Yeah.
They literally said, "You have to go talk to the PR desk." And they were like, "Well, we just want to know what your personal opinion is," and they wouldn't talk to them at all. And I've seen different other things on campuses where if anybody brings a I'm a big fan of comedy. I love comedians,
Mm-hmm. Me
and I
too.
understand the importance of comedy
Yes.
and being able to laugh at ourselves. I mean, Jesus, the last thing we need to do is take ourselves too seriously. Have you seen us lately?
Thank you.
And comedians can't work on campuses. That's when I knew something was really wrong at first. I'm like, it's comedy. Like, you
Gosh.
can't even do comedy on campus. Like, this is supposed to be the foundation of open thinking and learning and ideas and debate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's interesting, but yeah, we need more voices like yours that bring us back to a healthy perspective.
Thank you. And you know what? Everything that's happening right now, it's isolated in this moment in time, sure, of 2024. But even if someone is listening to this in 5 years, 2 weeks, 5 years, 10 years, there's going to be a new thing where there is pressure to prove your goodness, is how I think of it. And I think it's such a shame that in the place where young people are supposed to be exploring their wild ideas and learning how to be mavericks in the world, the people that are going to be the leaders of the world that we live in, being so afraid of even hearing an opposing view. And when I speak to young people, which I do a lot of the time, it's not that they don't want to speak in general with people they disagree with, is that they're afraid that they're going to be seen as accepting that worldview by their
Uh,
peers. So they have this idea that understanding someone and their position, being curious, is synonymous with acceptance. So
yeah,
something that I speak about all the time is, and again, it sounds so simple, but it's amazing what can change when you understand that understanding someone's position does not mean you're accepting their worldview.
yeah.
And I think just that in and of itself can show you why we're so afraid of even entertaining an opposing view, because we think that that will experience cancellation by proximity.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I get down the middle is, people be like, well, so what are you against? Well, people should have their freedom of choice
Mm-hmm.
and their rights, and what they want to take and do. And it's kind of what our whole freedom thing's about.
Yes.
And, they're like, well, so do you support this? And you're like, no, but I understand why family's important to them. And,
Mm-hmm.
and by sitting and being able to look at the two different arguments, you can then go, okay, so I see what's important for them here, and maybe the way they're going about it isn't working
Yes.
clearly, and they're angry about it, and so we need to find a better way. And same thing with these people over here on the other side. And so at that point, you can start going, okay, so how can we find a way to cut down the middle and try and bring everyone together where, this is a country where not everyone's going to get what you want. That's the
Right.
way it is. That's the way it always has been, and that's
Right.
part of a thriving democracy is the fact that we can debate, but we're still Americans. We can debate. We
Yes.
can we can play with ideas. I mean, what made America great is we were the cornerstone of all the great ideas in the world because we have the great engineers
Mm-hmm.
and basically freedom and the ability to be rewarded for your contribution if you worked hard, if you came with great ideas directly to that. You know, I used to look when I was a kid at Russia and communism, and it was a killer of the human
Man.
spirit, the human ideas, because it told you, we don't care how hard you work, we don't care how great ideas you come up with, you get the same dole out as everybody else.
Yeah.
So why bother, right?
Gosh.
And you're just like, okay, well, I'm just going to give up and have my little bread line here,
Yeah.
and that's what it does. And so and so we need to recognize that. But that's the only time where, now I have more thoughts where when I sit down, I look at people's polarized points. I can go, how can we design, something that works for everybody?
Mm.
And we may not agree on everything right now, but maybe we can start there. And that's
Yes.
how kind of negotiations work. You call
Yes,
you call your book The
exactly.
Third Perspective, and I think that's what we're talking about here. Is the third perspective the middle ground? Because maybe that's
It is. It is. Absolutely. It's the idea that in every single moment, especially those moments where we truly trick ourselves into believing that it's
mm,
one or the other,
yeah,
there's always a third way, and sometimes even a fourth and a
yeah,
fifth.
yeah.
And what I also like to think, how I like to think about it, Chris, is that we are all embodiments of the third perspective, whether we fucking like it or not. Because guess what? You don't neatly fit anywhere. You change your mind all the time. Sure, you have your belief system, which is the root, but your worldview constantly shifts. You meet someone who makes you think a little bit differently, but maybe because of your alliance, you push back onto it. But we're more fluid than we like to think.
Mm,
So for me, just what we're speaking about now, it's already so refreshing. And I can imagine that there's so many people listening to this, maybe even surprised that a black woman is speaking in this way, because again, we've been made to believe that this is a right wing white cis het man position to take, which is just
mm,
mad in and of itself. But I think one of the first things we can do, which can really help lift us out of this hopelessness, which I think we can all feel on some level, is to admit that the culture that we've created is stifling us. It's robbing us of intimacy, of interesting conversations, of dark humor. When was the last time you saw a film where you thought, oh, that's good? They were able to do that? Well, I can't remember
mm.
the last time that I experienced a piece of mainstream art that was daring and risky. And I think it's all part of that sanitization of just censoring slowly, slowly, slowly. So I think brave expression is not a nice to have. I think it's urgent.
Definitely,
Hmm.
definitely. And the other thing is I meet people who they've been one political party all their life,
Mm.
and I find that astounding. I grew up with kind of not into politics when I became hugely successful in business, and
Hmm.
I thought being a Republican was the thing to do because it's very business oriented. And then George Bush came along, the W,
Yeah.
and Dick Cheney took over the presidency, and I could see the money making that was going on with Halliburton and the corruption in the Iraq War. And then 9/11 really changed my perspective because
Mm.
it woke me up to a worldview where I was like, why are people in the world hating us? I thought everyone liked us, and why are they flying planes into our buildings?
Right.
And that made me go, maybe I need to find out. Are we doing something wrong? Like, why is everyone hating us? I thought we were the cool country.
Right.
And then of course I wasn't a big fan of the religious stuff, the religious right that was being pulled into
Hmm.
by the W. So I left the Republican Party at that time, and I just thought W was an idiot, and I still think he's an idiot.
Mm.
He's a very nice man, but I'd have him on the show, but I don't think he's the brightest bulb in the light category. Um,
In
but
the last.
but just imagine if I was still in the Republican Party and
Right.
seeing what I see now. So then I kind of wandered in the desert for a while. I liked Obama. Obama was a great leader. He had a great vision. He kind of reminded me of Bobby Kennedy, and he's a incredible communicator
Mm-hmm.
and a man of integrity. And I just thought, that's the guy.
Mm.
And so then I became, I suppose you call him a liberal. And then over, the George Floyd era and certainly the Donald Trump era, I became very woke and was
Mm.
really angry about a lot of things because I was getting gaslit every day by him.
Yeah. Yes.
And I understand the Constitution, the rule of law, and why all these things are important. And then after George Floyd, somewhere I don't know when I made my conversion to going back towards the middle, but
Mm.
somewhere it happened. I think over the last year, where I just saw it becoming more extreme, and I saw the college campus thing. I think it was the comedians on campus and the hear no evil, speak no evil. I could see
Yes.
people going to colleges to speak and getting shouted down by
Gosh.
the professors and and the students. I mean, certainly you look at woke now, and some people are supporting Hamas on college campuses, and you're like,
It's
you need to go over there and visit, man. Let's ship you over there for a while.
it's 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 mad. I mean, even at the time of us recording this, just yesterday, Jerry Seinfeld was giving his speech. I'm sure you might have seen it.
Yeah.
And there was a walkout of about 40 students because they see him as a Zionist. I mean, it's to what extent is it someone just being Jewish by default means I think there's this very binary way of viewing things. And I can hold multiple truths about so much of it because I do think we need more young people to be politically engaged, to care.
Yeah.
But when does it become just purely virtue signaling without actually knowing what foundation you're working from, So I think even as you were speaking, one of the main things that comes to mind, which I talk about a lot, is that everything gets to be a case by case basis.
Yeah.
You get to think about it and to assess and to see whether something makes sense or not, and to ask tough questions even to yourself. I think we need it. I think we need it.
Yeah. And I think we need to be wary of politicians that try and push it to extremes. I think we need to find more of those politicians that talk down the middle.
Yes.
There's one that's really big on TikTok, and I think they gerrymandered his position out. But he gets on and he just does a straight talk, and I like that. We've had a lot of politicians on the show that I allow on that you can have a conversation with them.
That's good.
Things.
That's good.
It's calm.
Yeah.
We're not slinging monkey crap at each other. And so I like politicians like that. And I think we need more of that.
I agree.
Yeah, because as leaders, they inspire us. That's what the founding fathers wanted. They wanted people who were the common working people and technically the smartest, like scientists and other things,
Yes.
go to Washington to figure stuff out. Instead, we've got these performative crazies that they pull stunts. I mean, these stunts are crazy. So your book gives people more of a roadmap and how to get into that. And
it does.
And how to do that. There's a framework you have of 3 pillars called awareness, responsibility, and expression. Give us some depth on that, if you would, please.
Absolutely. So the biggest case that I'm making just in my general work is that I think one of the biggest things underpinning cancel culture, collective sabotage, a culture of intolerance is self-censorship. Where you begin, and I'll just define self-censorship very simply. Self-censorship is when you begin to withhold your ideas, your thoughts, your opinions, your general expression, because you believe that you're going to be punished for it. So there was a time where maybe you could have believed that you'd be punished by your family, your local community, but now you can be punished by a shit ton of strangers in a comment section. Okay, so times have changed. So I think self-censorship is a serious problem because when you start to self-monitor, self-surveillance, and self-edit your speech to the point of speaking in a way that isn't even remotely human-like, where we put so many disclaimers and caveats and sort of Twitter speak, infographic speaks, it's just mad. To get from that into what I think of as mindful expression, as brave expression, where we can speak our minds and still be compassionate and still be empathetic and think critically and ask hard questions. A lot of people want to jump to expression. What do I say? What do I do? But we need to go through the phase of awareness. What are you actually afraid of? What do you think will happen when you speak your mind? So I'm going to take you through all of that as the first part of the book, because again, it's not a memoir. It's not a rant. I don't think we need any of that anymore. I think we actually need something tangible and solid so we realize and learn how to actually communicate effectively and more mindfully and push back on this culture. So we go through awareness. What are you afraid of? And then we go through responsibility, where you have to take responsibility of your so-called wrong thoughts.
What? I have to be self-accountable? No way.
Because a lot of us, oh my goodness, we have become, so we think all of these things and maybe behind closed doors, we sort of say, I actually think this way. I don't agree with that. but we won't actually stand in our convictions and our values and say, this is what I believe. I respect that this is your worldview, but this is mine. Where we stop agreeing with things that we don't agree with to the point of denying reality. You know, I need us to take responsibility for our thoughts, take responsibility for your values and your convictions without being closed-minded, because you can do both, right? And then the last phase is expression. I need us to know how we're currently communicating. What is your communication style? A lot of us think we're being assertive, but we're actually very aggressive and very intolerant. So you have some people, and they tend to be my male clients, which is interesting, who say things like, well, Africa, my issue is not actually self-censorship. More people need to step the fuck up, have a backbone, say what it is that they feel. I do it.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that they don't have a social filter. They don't have a refined social filter where they use discernment in conversations, where they allow themselves to listen more than they speak. So they say everything because they've also bought into this idea that to be brave in your expression, just give them fucking everything you have. Well, where the two end up being holding hands is that they're both ineffective in their communication, whether your issue is self-censorship or not having a refined social filter. So I'm going to take you through very, very intricate prompts and exercises, and not just on a surface level. We go very deep in this because I need you to understand whether the way you're currently communicating is working for you or against you. So those three phases of awareness, responsibility, and expression get you to a place of actually communicating, not just bravely, but also very effectively, which is what I think we need.
There you go. I love it. You know, people need that roadmap
Yeah.
to take a look at how to do things. You know,
Yes.
I've tried to listen more. I've tried to be more slow in my response and not less
Mm-hmm.
reactive. I try to be more stoic in my responses too. It used to be when people dumped their, you know, whatever the usual stuff was on me.
Yeah.
It was reactionary. You jump in and be like, ah. But now I try to be a bit more measured and go, how can I approach this without coming across as a bully? That's one thing I do as a
Yes.
man because, you know, as you kind of talked about with men, we kind of have that
Mm-hmm.
way about us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how we operate in a tribe of men with each other, with other men. But, you know,
And
sometimes,
it can be useful in different contexts, right? But we
yeah,
need to be able to use discernment to know what is useful here, what is not useful here. Because everything is a constant negotiation. You can't get people on your side if you're shaming them and berating them to like it's not gonna happen.
yeah,
It's
I'm
not
going to have
gonna
you talk to all
happen.
my ex girlfriends and,
Give me their numbers. I'll
the
call them
shaming.
after.
Lots of shaming. Women love the shame, but it's a feature, not a bug, if you understand it. But no, you know, I've kind of started to realize there's a bulliness to it, where you're
Mm,
bullying when you're shoving your ideas at people and you're like like you say, trying to shame them. There's a bullying to that shaming where you're, and so I've tried to sit down in my measurement of it, or try to be more measured, and thought, okay, how can we have this discussion, and how can I reply to them in a way that doesn't sound bullying, that doesn't sound
yeah.
minimizing, shaming,
Yes.
um, but it's constructive. It's kind of hard to do sometimes. So I don't know. Here's an example I'm dealing with this morning that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
interesting. So I have a friend who I just made a new friend on Facebook. Oh, I don't know why that sounds funny to me. There's something. I made a new friend today.
It's quite endearing, actually. It's quite wholesome. I
That's quite
like it.
wholesome. I feel like I'm Mr. Rogers. Today we made a friend, boys and girls. Anyway, I don't know why that's funny, but so I made a new friend, and I posted about how I was really concerned about generative AI and some of the deception
Mm,
that's going on, and I'm concerned about what the gross amount of percentage of people that are falling for really obvious fake AI. And you know, it's not really that great yet. And if people are falling for really, you know, you can see the fingers are messed up and the eyes are messed up. You know, when they have like 10 fingers, it's fake photo, people. I don't know. I
mm,
don't know why I did say that. On
mm-hmm.
one hand, I should establish, because people are going to write me. You got that wrong. And so basically, this friend came on, and so he saw the AI and how I was concerned about people are just not smart enough to figure out AI. And he wrote some stuff it's clear that he listens to Fox News and probably some other programming, manipulative, mind control channels, not news. And so he made some comments, and I was like, okay, should I respond to this? Because I mean, there's some things that you should just sidestep.
Yeah.
And so there was a little bit of he was worried about losing his democracy, and I'm like, I think I can handle this one. And so he's like, we can lose our democracy any second now under this current president. So I wrote him back, and I basically tried not to bully, and I said, hey, just so you know, voting is one of the foundations of our democracy. Our democracy is pretty okay, as long as you can still have the right to vote, speak your opinion, and we still have the Constitution that stands. There's no authoritarians running this country. We're probably okay. So you just breathe a little bit, man. And then I said, it sounds like what you're describing is some of the news sources you're using probably aren't giving you the best information.
Right.
You may want to turn those off and do some more reading. And there was something he cited that was completely debunkable. Oh, it was the Biden administration is flying immigrants into the nation on taxpayer dime. They're just wholesale flying people in that are immigrants trying to get over the border, and that's pretty easy to debunk. So I sent him just a link to that. I said, "Here's some data. I go search some of the other data. Go read a lot. There's a lot of proof on this." And instead, what I got, I mean, he replied nicely to me, but I got the whole laundry list of conspiracies, and it's like a 2-page thing of every crazy thing that you can imagine QAnonish. And so now I can't reply. Do you have any ideas on how I can bridge that gap, or do I need to just sidestep that and just
I think sometimes it's just time, and you speak to something that I also think about and is a key part of the work that I do. You are not responsible for how someone else is going to respond. I think that's ultimately it. I think you are responsible for being clear on what your intention is. Is your intention to change someone's mind in this conversation, in this text, whatever it might be? But also, you can't have any over attachment to what the response will be. You have done your part, so you have to just let it marinate for however long it needs to. I think sometimes we have an expectation, whether we will admit it or not, it's often subconscious, but even conscious. We want the person to respond in a certain way. We want them to value the information we have just put forward, how intentionally grounded and nuanced we have been in this message, so they should understand and get on board. That's not how it works. Especially when the person has deeply entrenched beliefs and values around what they're talking about. I think all you can do, which it sounds to me you have done, you can plant the seed. But you don't get to decide how it's going to grow, when it's going to sprout, or what. That will take care of itself if it needs to. So I don't even think there's a neat conclusion to any of this. I think you just have to both on some level accept that this is where you agree to disagree, but him agreeing with what he does and you agreeing with what you do, it doesn't directly impact your life really. So I don't think it's right. So I think sometimes what I'm trying to say is that we need to have a detachment to the outcome of a conversation or us reaching out. I think that's very important. Again, sounds so simple when you say it, but it's amazing how much the ego will not fucking allow you to practice that, because we want the person to agree, especially if we have any kind of personal relationship. It's almost like we tell ourselves, if you value me enough as a person, you will see things where I'm coming from. That's not how it works,
I love how you really have this down. You've really analyzed this a lot, and I'm just sitting here learning. And the way you describe it too is so easy to understand. You mentioned or alluded to not being offended by the response, where you feel like your ego's attacked, and you're like, well, geez, I gave them smart information, and they just took a giant dump on it. And, I'm offended now, so F that person. And
right. We're so quick to, this is another thing that I had to spot in myself first, Chris. And a lot of these things, I really want people to know, I am not preaching at you as some kind of expert. No, I had to notice these things and accept them and work at them in myself first. But I realized that another thing for me was to just learn to observe my own ego in action, as in, what is my intention here? Am I trying to get someone to change their mind because I truly believe that I have something useful to say? Or am I leading with self-righteousness on some level? Like, I know more than you. You are, kind of, with, again, we do a lot of these things without even realizing that we sort of assert our worldview. Sometimes it's positioned as concern, which I find so amazing. When you spot it as yourself, I'm just concerned about my friend, so let me just give you all of these links to this. So I'm always just checking myself to be like, Africa, do you really care if this person changes their mind? Or do you want to sort of assert your worldview because it strokes your ego in some way? So I think it can be very interesting when you take on the role of observer to be like, that's interesting. What's my motivation to share this thing, or to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I love how you're having us really start thinking about how we're receiving the data, how we're interpreting it, how we're reacting. And you're going to have me thinking more. I've ordered your book on audiobook for tomorrow, I guess. And that's how I consume everything I do in the car and gym. But these are things that we need to think about more. Can we get your book in speaking on college campuses soon, please?
Oh my God, yes. That's actually part of what I want to do. I think if as adults we're struggling with this, think of what it's like right now to be in your 20s, to be a teenager. So I really want to adapt a lot of my work so that I can really connect with young people. And it already does quite a lot for a reason. But gosh, we just need this. And I like bringing it back to the self so that it's more manageable, because a lot of the time when people are speaking about these topics, it's sort of just woven in academic jargon that no one can understand, or it's just boring. And we need to speak in a way that the everyday person will be able to relate to it and to think, oh my goodness, around a dinner table, I end up agreeing with things that I don't actually agree with. Like, why am I agreeing with things that I don't believe to be true? Why do I feel so anxious when a question is posed to me so that I can state what I actually think? Why do I go into that mode of bullying when actually I would be served better if I was to just retract a little bit and allow myself to be uncomfortable, but listen to what someone has to say? So I like bringing it back to the self, because I think it's just much more manageable and realistic.
Definitely. Is there any chance you've started a group for this, like a Facebook group or some sort of group of us middle people, us third perspective people?
Yes, I really, really want to. Again, if anyone connects to this conversation and you really need it, just get in touch with me, africabrooke.com. And if I can see that there's a big demand for this conversation, I really want to create a community of people that can also meet up in person. Because I think also a lot of these conversations are only had online, so people don't really get to see the proof of like-minded communities. But I know that this is a conversation that people are craving, but some feel like they're not allowed to admit it,
And I think you bring up a good point. The being with each other in person, we understand, we have more empathy towards each other. We're more caring about, each other. When we're behind that veil, I remember before social media, there was a thing where basically the reason you get road rage in cars is because you kind of feel like you're in this armored vehicle and you're cut off from everything. So you're just ugly to people around you on the road, which describes most of California. But in New York probably. You feel like you're protected. And so on social media, you're just seeing someone's avatar.
Yes.
And, you're not seeing the humanness of that person. And it makes a difference in person. But I would love if you had, because you're such a great mind on this and leader, if you had like a Facebook group or third party group where you had people, because I need a home. I don't have a home. Those woke people and the white nationalists and the woke people have a home. I have no home.
They do.
I'm just, it's just you and me at this point, and I don't know, a couple other people. We need, but then I don't know. You'll probably start a Facebook group and people start
I'll make it
fighting over.
happen.
You're not doing the third perspective right. No, I'm doing the third perspective. No, the third perspective is done this way. No, it's done this way. I'm a right-winging third perspective. Damn
It
it.
always happens, right? You know what? It's crazy you say that. That's something I think about all the time, Chris, that you go from one echo chamber and you have to be so careful because you can neatly end up in another confined space. So but yeah, I think I'll make it happen because we need
Maybe.
this and we need to laugh. We need to laugh about these things, no?
Yeah. Maybe we could just, because I like the idea of this group because we can just laugh at everybody else on the left. Hey, you see what those stupids did today on the right? Which is what I do anyway on my Facebook.
Humility. So it's going to be a very humble group.
See, we need to have you lead this and set the rules so you can be like, oh, you guys are being humble. Get in the line. There's no left and right third perspective.
Not here, not in this house.
Only the third. So there you go. Give people your final thoughts and pitch out order of the book as we go on.
Yes, I really want you to know again that the way that I'm putting this together is that it's a roadmap that is specifically designed for you. It's not me saying this is no. You get to design this. And when you get the book, you will see exactly what I mean. And you can refine it as you change, your roadmap changes as well. And again, I think there really is a tangible way we can push back against cancel culture. And I know that this book has done that because I have tested this method solidly for the past 5 years with thousands of people. Nice. And I really do want you to experience this because I think the level of hopelessness that we all are starting to feel, I don't think we need to just accept it as the norm. So please accept this as my gift to you, the third perspective.
There you go. Now, one other idea for you, and I know you're really busy, and people used to do this to me all the time. Like, here's some ideas for you, Chris. You know, how much time do I have? Maybe a video series or a recorded movie series.
Yes.
You know, I remember, I forget the gentleman's name. I think he was an NFL athlete, but after George Floyd, he started holding these conversations. Was it Conversation with a Black Man? He started holding these conversations, and they were really enlightening because they were calm. And they went viral, and I think he's got
amazing. What was it called?
I'm trying to see if I can jog the
please.
Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man by Emmanuel. Here it's cutting off on the Google. Come on, Google, get going there. Emmanuel Acho.
Okay.
And I don't know if you saw the videos, but it started as a YouTube series. This is his book, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. But he started a YouTube series I think it was after George Floyd was the proponent of it. And he started sitting down and talking to people about, and he would have really rich conversations. And he would invite people who were from opposing thoughts, like maybe some people who had racism and had prejudice against certain different ideals or political standings.
Oh, I love that.
And he would have a calm situation, and by the setting that he would enable, and so a video series like that. I know we had somebody just recently on who they were one of the first people to do those cards that you can get where you can enable conversation.
Yes.
And he won several Emmys for, putting a couple together and having them talk about stuff they maybe never talked about. And so if you ever, I know you're busy, so.
No, but I'd love to create something. I think that's why my second podcast, which is more of a show, if you will, Unthinkable Thoughts, is exactly about that. Bringing the things that we think we can only speak about behind closed doors, really bringing them to the fore. And again, in that same respect, having it in a way that isn't just antagonistic debate style, who can, I just want to make really beautiful, potent work with this topic, because I think we need something that is not just fueling the division that we're speaking out against, So if anyone listening to this thinks we can create something wonderful together, get in touch. There you go. We'll do it.
And then we have your .coms, right?
Yes.
There you go. So you are the person I'm betting on to save America. So please do. It's on you. Don't feel too much pressure. But
I accept.
there you go. You will lead us to the promised land. So thank you very much for coming to the show, Africa. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This was I can even just feel an expansion in my body, and just you've really affirmed and validated my work. And I've just loved how much laughter there was in this conversation. So thank you so much for having me.
And thank you. I mean, I finally found a kindred spirit in the middle, because there's not I believe there's a lot of us in America.
There are.
We saw that where there are people in the middle who cross political spectrums to vote for whoever can carry this democracy forward for another 4 years. You have to vote for the Constitution, and whoever can be the best steward of that. And we're all stewards of this. We just had Eddie Glaude Jr. on this show talking about how we're all leaders and we're all stewards of this democracy.
Yes.
We're all responsible for it.
Yes.
And I think taking on what you talk about, in that we're all leaders and stewards of this, we need to have better conversations.
I agree.
Really, really important.
I agree.
Folks, order up the book wherever fine books are sold. The Third Perspective, Brave Expression in the Age of Intolerance by Africa Brooke, out May 14th, 2024. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss. Chris Voss, one of the TikTok and all those crazy places on the internet. Thanks for being here. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.